A quiet night. It was a quiet night. The clock showed 9:39 p.m. The Carter family had finished dinner and was now enjoying a peaceful evening in their living room. Emily, the mother, was sipping tea while listening to her children, Jake and Lily, share stories about their day at school. David, the father, sat on the couch, half watching the news on the TV. Suddenly, the screen turned red with a breaking news banner. The news anchor appeared visibly tense. We interrupt this broadcast for an urgent announcement. Reports of an unexplained outbreak have been spreading across certain areas of the country. Those affected exhibit extreme aggression, physical deformities, and violent behavior toward others. Authorities are urging everyone to stay indoors unless absolutely necessary. Emily froze, her hand gripping the mug tighter. David, what does this mean? Is it another virus? David turned up the volume, his brows furrowed. It's probably exaggerated. You know how the media loves to sensationalize everything. But Jake's timid voice broke the tense silence in the room. Mom, does this mean people are hurting each other? Emily immediately pulled him close, stroking his hair. No, sweetheart, it's just a scary story on the news. Nothing's going to happen to us. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her concern. Just as she spoke, a strange noise came from the backyard. It was deep and guttural, followed by the sound of branches snapping. David sat upright and looked toward the window. The backyard was dark, only faintly illuminated by the porch light. What was that? Emily asked nervously. Probably an animal, David replied, standing up and grabbing a flashlight. I'll go check it out. No, David, don't. Emily said, alarmed. You heard the news. What if there's something out there? David forced a reassuring smile. It's probably just a raccoon or something. I'll be right back. As he stepped outside, the cool night air sent a shiver down his spine. The backyard was eerily quiet, except for the occasional rustle of leaves. He scanned the area with the flashlight, his beam landing on the old oak tree. Beneath it, he noticed something unusual, a mess of feathers and what looked like a chunk of raw meat. Taking a cautious step closer, he aimed the flashlight higher. That's when he saw it. A figure crouched under the tree, its back turned to him. At first glance, it looked like a person, but something was off. Hey, David called out, his voice trembling slightly. Who's there? This is private property. The figure froze, then slowly turned its head. David's stomach dropped. Its eyes were completely white, its face disfigured with deep wounds, and its mouth dripping with a dark, viscous fluid. David stumbled back, his breath quickening. What the... The creature let out a guttural snarl and lunged toward him with unnatural speed. David barely managed to spin around and sprint back toward the house. Slamming the door shut behind him, he locked it and turned to his family, panting, Duck. There's something out there, he stammered, his face pale. It's not human. Emily's face turned white. What do you mean? What did you see? Before he could answer, a loud bang came from the living room window. The creature was now outside, its face pressed against the glass, but it wasn't alone. More figures began emerging from the shadows, their distorted forms swaying as they moved closer to the house. Mom, Dad, what's happening? Lily cried, clinging to her mother. David grabbed a knife from the kitchen and turned to Emily. "Take the kids to the living room. Stay away from the windows." The glass shattered before they could react further. One of the creatures forced its way through the broken window, its rotting hands reaching toward them. David lunged forward, plunging the knife into its chest, but the creature didn't flinch. It kept advancing, forcing David to the ground. Emily grabbed a chair and smashed it against the creature's head, momentarily knocking it back, but the sounds of breaking glass echoed throughout the house. More of them were coming in. David scrambled to his feet, his voice hoarse as he yelled, "We need to get to the back door, now." The family rushed toward the back door, but Emily paused, gripping David's arm. "David, is it just here, or is the whole country like this?" David hesitated, glancing out the shattered window at the chaos spilling into the street. Fires burned in the distance, screams echoed in the night, and more of the creatures lurched through the neighborhood. "I think," he whispered, "this is just the beginning." As they opened the back door, they were met with a scene straight out of a nightmare. The street was no longer quiet. Cars burned, people screamed, and the infected roamed freely, hunting. David turned to his family, his expression grim but determined. "No matter what, don't stop running. Don't look back." Emily clutched Jake and Lily's hands tightly, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Stay close to me." David led the way, gripping the knife with white knuckles. The family stepped onto the street, their breaths visible in the cold night air. The infected were everywhere, their twisted forms illuminated by the flickering flames of burning cars. "Go, now," David shouted, pushing them forward. They weaved through the chaos, dodging grasping hands and guttural snarls. A bloodied man stumbled in their path, his pale eyes locking onto Emily. David didn't hesitate. He drove the knife into the creature's chest, shoving it aside. Jake tripped, his small cry piercing the air. Emily pulled him to his feet, but the delay cost them. A group of infected turned their heads in unison, their movements eerily synchronized. "They've seen us," David yelled, his voice desperate. "Run!